Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. I cannot remember the books I've read any more than the meals I've eaten. Even so, they have made me. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Of course, I have to pick that quote because our dear friend, returning guest, the one, the only, Tyler Wagner, founder of Authors Unite. If you haven't listened to episode 29 of the Culture Matters podcast, I think you should go do that because, that was the first time Tyler actually came on the show. He's also been on the show numerous times and staple in my life, good friend. I've actually dedicated something to him recently, which is my 100 conversations in 100 days.
Yeah.
And, out of inspiration for his 20,000 plus sales calls in 5 years, I've told like 7 or 8 people about this friend I have that did that. And there was like, what? Thanks for coming back, man.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
It's going to be fun.
So do we talk about the quote first, or what do you want?
Well, I'd love to know your thoughts on the quote. Yeah, I was like, well, what quote could I use to, for today?
Yeah, no, the first thing I thought, I love the quote. And the first thing I thought about was like, when people ask me like, hey, like, what did you, and maybe this isn't good. I actually would love your reflection on this. When people ask me about like, what did you learn in this book? Or like, tell me, a lot of times I honestly cannot remember. It's more of like this, I don't know if you call it in your subconscious or if I just have like this bank of information in my brain that it's like I don't have like access to it as far as like directly detailed, like tell me what it is, but I know that it is changing the way that I move about the world and make decisions. Like every book I read like pivots me a little bit, but it's not, for me, it's not something like, oh, this book, this is the exact thing that I got from it. It's more just like this constant evolution of the more I read, the more I develop and change, I guess, Do you
think that's tied to the emotionality of the emotionality or the intuitive nature of you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it could be that. It's really how I go about almost everything, like I mean, people ask me like, what are your metrics in your business, or, like, what are your goals? And a lot of times I've started to get better at that. But in the past, a lot of times I'd be like, I don't know. I'm just trying to do as many phone calls as humanly possible. I don't have necessarily a goal or a metric. It's just, these are all the slots available in my calendar and I'm trying to fill them. That's what I'm trying to do. So with reading, I feel like that's how it is for me too. Although sometimes I'll read a book for a specific reason. But most of the time I'm really just reading it and because I'm just interested in the topic, and then it like helps me make better decisions or changes the way I think. But I'm not like reading it in a fashion of like trying to pick out detail, which I guess is not the best way. You should probably read to comprehend.
What have you found because you've interacted with so many entrepreneurs who are either in the process of articulating their ideas through the written form or marketing those ideas, but you're interacting, those 20,000 plus people, way beyond that even, you've talked to. Are you find that a lot of them can relate to what you're saying about this? Or
no, I don't think so. I think a lot of people, like they read, they take notes, they highlight, and it's very much, a lot like that. Same thing with business. I think a lot of people are like, especially like sales teams, logically you would have goals, like you'd have metrics and stuff that you want to hit, like reach outs, phone calls, books, sales, like all that stuff lined up and very detailed and metric based. But for me, it's more of just like this constant doing, becoming aware of what happened from the doing, and then altering in a better way based on the knowledge I gained from the previous doing. but it's very rare of me like actually sitting down and actually mapping, the full thing out. It's more of a constant movement and iteration.
What are the pros to that?
I just, it works for me. I don't know. So I think the pro, I mean, it's worked so far. So I think the pro is like, it feels, everything flows, like it feels good. And I feel like I'm moving in a way that I'm supposed to be moving. And maybe there's like a spiritual component to that. So that feels good. But then on the flip side, I think the negative is that, if you never stop and really try to comprehend a full book, well, then you're obviously not getting everything out of it that you could. And then same thing with business. If you never look at the entirety of something and really put metrics completely down, then you're probably missing out on some opportunities, I would imagine. But on the flip side, to go even deeper, I would say if you focus too much on that side, then you're probably missing out on the intuitive side, and the flow that I'm talking about. So there's probably a happy medium. I just tend to lean way more towards.
Well, have you navigated around a lot of people that really sound like they've got it together, but they're just not taking the actions?
Oh yeah. So many.
I'm curious what what, so it's like a social experiment. All the people you've talked to that have either launched their product offering, not at varying degrees. And I'm curious if those metrics or intention to have that plan somehow sabotage the action. Is there a correlation there?
With books, that happens all the time, actually. Like most people, I can't tell you how many phone calls I've had with clients or potential clients, and they're like, yeah, I've been trying to figure out the title of the book for like the past 6 months, and they haven't written a word. They're like they will not allow themselves to do the work until they have the title and the subtitle, and they need the cover. And it's like, things don't really work that way. And it's probably, it's the same thing with business is, you could spend years on a business plan, or you could spend a day or two and then get to work. And then the truth of the matter is, any business plan or any book or any plan that you have, it's going to be altered. I don't know of like any successful businessman from the beginning. Like if you think about the huge successes like Amazon's, Tesla, stuff like that, whatever that original plan was, I highly doubt in the end it was exactly that plan. Like I do not believe that happened. So I think people get wrapped up in that a lot. They like play business, and they're so focused on the planning, making sure everything's perfect, and and it's actually a way of not taking action, because, doing the actual phone call, I guess for some people is like the scary part, because there's rejection involved and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I think a lot of people, most people do that.
What do you mean play business?
Play business would mean like, you have all these ideas and, you'll build like a 30-page business plan with all these things. But the reality is you need to solve a problem. You need customers. And that takes, actually reaching out to people, having conversations, getting rejected, going through kind of, difficult things in some sense. Whereas, creating a business plan for some people may be a lot of fun, for others, maybe not that fun. But there's no like fear or rejection on that side of the equation, because it's kind of just you by yourself idealizing, or, whatever the word would be, and creating a plan. And a plan's good, but it's not the full thing. Like you actually have to do stuff about it. So, and I do think most people are stuck there, and also I think people are either confused on the how, or they know the how and they're afraid to take action. It's either one of the two, right? So for people that are confused on the how, with what we talked about in the last podcast with infinite partnership system, what I love about that is I think that mitigates that, right? Because I think in this whole culture of marketing and stuff, and I want to be clear before I say this, I think we've talked about this before, but I think that like the Russell Brunsons, ClickFunnels, I think all that stuff's great and it works for a lot of people, but I also think it does not work for a majority of people. Like, building a sales funnel and having it generate millions of dollars with like Facebook ads, I think it's probably less than 1% of people that do that actually get that result. But everybody's trying it. And in reality, it's like, okay, you know, there's so many variables you can mess up, and most people do, and they lose their money on ad spend. Or you could just build a good business and have a ton of conversations and be guaranteed success. Like this method of what we talked about in the last one of marketing, it completely removes, to me, it removes risk, assuming the product is good. If the product is good, there's no way this method could fail. It's just not even possible, you know? So I think that mitigates that. But then once people know the how, you know, then actually doing the work is scary, I guess, as well, you know? So I don't know.
Would you liken it to the difference between mental masturbation and sex?
Wait, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's pretty similar. Yeah.
Because you could do the latter and be bad at it, and you can get
Yeah.
stuck in the former out of fear of trying the latter.
Yeah. And you know, for me, I never experienced that. I think I was just, my excitement outplayed my fear on that one, you know? So, yeah, that was easy for me, but yeah.
Welcome to the Culture Matters podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, it's
The
accurate.
idea of the what do you think of those other business models actually? Is it that people are missing the work part of it? Maybe they're subconsciously externalizing their own responsibility.
You mean like doing like the sales funnel Facebook ads type thing?
Yeah, or like, yeah, what ClickFunnels, for example.
I just think I think it's complicated, man. Like I really do. Like I tried it for so many years and I had minor success with it, nothing to like really speak on. But like there's so many variables in that play. And I know there's agencies, there's people that like truly have kind of mastered it. But if you really look at it, right? So, you know, variable, like the person, right? Like your charisma, right? So like in the ads, it's like you or the product. Okay. So let's just say it's you. You know, okay, well, that's you as a person are a variable. Like, do people like you? Do they trust you? And then the actual content on the page, like the sales copy, that's another variable. Even like things as like the loading speed on the website, you know, like say a bunch of people are clicking your ads and then they get to your website and it's taking like 5 seconds too long to load and our attention spans are so low. So they click off the page, you know, and then the ad has to convert. There's literally probably 50 different variables. And I think what happens to a lot of people and what happened to me is I kept trying all these different ads and all these different sales pages. In my ClickFunnels account, there was probably, dude, I think at one point there was like 400 or 500 different funnels that my team had built. And we were trying them all out. And sometimes they would work and then they would stop working. And we'd be like, okay, well, why did, you know, it was working for a week. And then you find out like Facebook ads, if you don't like iterate the ads and stuff, like eventually they stop, like they just kind of decrease in the way that they work. Like that has their own other algorithm. Then the Facebook algorithm changes, you know, like Apple. And I don't know if you remember that, but Apple and Facebook had some sort of like tiff about like sharing data. So then everything changed for Facebook ads. So there's so many variables. And I just think if you go the route of like building relationships and referrals, there is no variable. Like there's nothing. Like the website could be terrible. It doesn't matter because as long as the product or service is good and you build good relationships and they refer to you, your website could look like crap. There's no ad. There's not, it's just trust is transferred. It's beautiful and it worked, you know? So
How do you think that happens?
I think it's complicated. With like referrals.
Yeah.
Well, I think for that, it's, you know, it's kind of like, here's what I tell people is in the beginning, it's really hard to sell when you don't have testimonials. So like I helped a few friends for free with books like 12 years ago or so. They gave me video testimonials and everything else from that point was a lot easier. And then when you add on getting the sale from a referral or the potential client from a referral. So say it's with a book publisher in our example. So somebody works with a book publisher for 6 months to a year, right? They love the experience. They've written their whole book and they're about to publish. and they trust the publisher and the whole team involved. And then they get sent over to me to do the marketing for the book. And then I show them like thousands of testimonials. I mean, there's just no way to lose in that scenario unless they just like literally don't have the money. There's no other objection they could give because we guarantee it. It came from somebody you've known for a year or more that you trust. There's thousands of other videos of people saying how like it positively impacted them working with us. And it's just like you set yourself up for success there. Whereas the other route of like sending Facebook ads to people that never have never met you or heard of you or know any of your friends or anything, them hitting this website and then them converting and then paying you. Logically, right? That way would be way harder to convert someone, right? Like that, we can agree on that. So just in the sense of difficulty, I think that's why it's harder.
Part of it that you're borrowing the brand of the institution.
Totally. Yeah. You know, like I think one of our biggest partners, like Morgan James Publishing, they've been in business like 25 years. David Hancock, the founder, he's like very, very well respected. And he's on the homepage of our website. We did his book. They've done thousands of books at Morgan James. And it's happened multiple times where when people notice that I've worked with him, trust is immediately like delivered, like, or just there. They're like, oh, I know David. He changed the industry with hybrid publishing. If you worked with him and he vouches for you, then I don't really need to know anything else more. I'm down to refer to you or I'm down to work with you just because of that. So there's like things like that, and you could be like strategic about that too. Like instead of, say you go into an industry, and I didn't do this right from the beginning, right? It took me like 6 or 7 years to really start to figure out this like partnership thing. But say in the beginning, if you go into an industry or a niche and you create a product or service, instead of looking at the top players as competitors that you want to beat, imagine if you started by actually reaching out to them and building a relationship, and then maybe do free work for them, like literally just like do some work for them for free and get them results. And then you are able to put them on your website. And now you, as the new player in the niche, have the top 5 people in the niche as testimonials for your business. That would be crazy. You would kill it, so that's a great idea. I just thought of it now. Like that's what you should do. Any niche you go into, just go to start with the top people, get testimonials from them. Everybody already knows them. And then it's like you kind of actually become the top inevitably because you've helped the top, or at least you're even with, like that's interesting. Let's do that.
If you were giving me counsel, like what would you say?
Well, so with culture, I would say, and now I will say with yours, I think there's probably less people, obviously, in your space. I know a few people that like help organizations with their culture. I don't think it's like the same way you do it. Obviously, I would say your way's just as different. But regardless, if I was you, I would look at who are the top speakers, people or companies that are teaching culture in your same industry. And then I would reach out to them and see if there's actually ways you could benefit them. It sounds weird, actually. It's almost like, so wait, you're telling me to help my top competitors? And I guess that is actually what I'm telling you to do, because why not? Like if you believe in yourself and your product or your service is valuable enough, then why would it matter if you help your customers? Or excuse me, if you help your top competitors? Like, why would that matter? Like help deliver them value, have them give you testimonial. So maybe, and I know it's different, but for some reason I'm thinking McKinsey, right? So I don't think they do culture, but they do like consulting and stuff for big organizations. Imagine if you just like went, reached out to McKinsey and you helped them with their culture for free, right? Took a bunch of time, helped them for free. And then McKinsey gave you a testimonial. And then from there, you reached out to every organization that McKinsey has worked with, like Johnson & Johnson, like all of the Fortune 500 that they do consulting for. And you showed them the testimonial from McKinsey. like you'd probably like your conversion rates would definitely go up. I mean, it would definitely. So, you know, it doesn't even have to be direct competitor. It could just be like somebody that does something with the companies that you're trying to work with. And McKinsey's obviously, I think, you know, whatever, what would you call it? Like they're the best at consulting or whatever, like they're the top consultant company or something.
They,
I think so.
well, they're instantiated in the higher echelon
Mhm.
governments at this point.
Yeah, there you go.
I think
And
over 40% of Ivy League graduates of the top, big three school or end up working for the big three, whether that's McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group or Bain or one of those.
oh yeah, I even forgot about the other ones. For some reason, McKenzie's just like
Well,
planted.
yeah, that
Good branding, I guess. It's just like in my head. But like, does that make I'm just
it makes that McKinsey is definitely an accurate example of this. They're huge.
yeah. But what are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious. Like, did that, like that strategy that I just mapped out, maybe you do it, maybe you don't do it, but I just mean like, and maybe now because you're further ahead in your business, maybe it wouldn't make sense,
Oh
but
no, this is
you know, I think it would work, you know?
I think that you are smart.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
Clip
I mean, dude, we've been friends how long? God.
it.
No, I mean, Ty, this is actually awesome segue because of the type of work we're in, it creates that that conflict of at this juncture for us to be a firm, we don't, because the type of work it is, testimonials hasn't been a part of, because it's
Yeah.
like, protecting the interest of and that creates a whole conflict of, well, if nobody knows, what you've accomplished, then the more profound it is of what you're articulating, psychologically, it would actually invert. Like they'll think you're lying or you're crazy or you're wrong. The more profound the idea, the more likely anxiety goes up, because cortisol, stress hormone, blocks openness, conceptualization. It's the testimonial that you're speaking to that lowers cortisol and creates the S-man effect, the crowd effect.
Ah, I know the crowd.
So
Yeah.
to agree with your framework, your concept, which anecdotally has clearly worked with your multi-explosion, your hugely profitable organization. That's part of the value of the testimony. It's like that other person neurologically lowers cortisol, increases dopamine. Like when you write down your goals, you feel good. Or
Yeah.
you write that happens to the brain when someone edifies you. You said to your buddy Bob, Jay is one of the main reasons why the culture is what it is. Then Bob is going to be like, even below awareness, more open to. So as a firm, that's been it's generally, if we're going to go the route of like the professional firm, I would argue the difference between a firm and, let's say, maybe a pundit that's selling a course that's maybe not working hand in hand with the organization for years. The testimony, like, they're going to have a higher volume of traffic if they're a subject matter expert in culture, whereas we become a partner of the culture with our client partners. So the anonymity piece has been very important to us at the stage that we've been at. And that comes with a cost.
Yeah.
Like you said, the sales is harder.
Yeah, and I think for you too, what's interesting, I actually just got a recent testimonial where the guy, it was co-authors, husband and wife, and they literally said, they were like, I was hesitant to give this testimonial because I honestly don't want other people to know about Tyler, because I want to keep him like my secret for our books. And I think with you, and I don't know, I'm going to try to word this correctly, but I think with you, like in some cases, the people, like you're partnering with them and you're creating such a difference and such value that it's almost like they want to keep you their kind of secret, right? Because it's kind of like an advantage. Like to have you on a business's team is certainly an advantage, like, so,
Thanks.
I don't know if that's true or
Yeah,
not.
so the question becomes, how do we play to that in a way that doesn't undermine the integrity of the relationship, that while simultaneously developing that entrepreneur into a more open, inclusive, trusting, educated, both individual and general equity. That's a process. I would go so far to say that thought process, even, or let's say that behavioral tendency that you just articulated, that actually is a part of business. We all share that. Example, do you want to lose your best employee to your competitor if they make you a huge return on your investment? It would be, number one, especially if you care about them and you love them, it would be emotionally devastating at some level.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for me, the biggest example is really like, because how our marketing capabilities for books is like very unique and we really don't have competition in it. So it's like funny, like people will be like, hey, can you like give me all your email lists that you use to help clients get on these lists? And I'm like, so wait, you're asking me to like give you the business, like to like give you, so it would be like, I'm not, I think relationships are great and you should build them, but I'm not suggesting, to give away all the code to your application to everybody.
I'd like to acknowledge you and affirm something, the spirit of really Authors Unite, because of how we foresaw building ourselves as a firm that would be that partner with our client partners for the long-term to growth. And what are the ways to navigate the fact that we're not going a testimony route in that sense to increase the likelihood of new relationships? What had we not invested into the process of developing literature? This is where the book comes in that we did. Meaning, I can't see us where we are. Meaning 30 days of thought, because of the personalized touch of our organization, client facing. 30 days of thought has been an ideal medium of creating those relationships. So that's a testimony for the value of the book, and the process of figuring out, what types of people are interested in culture, are interested in how we do things as a firm, and would we want to be partnered with over the long term. Like, meaning without the book, it would have been much more difficult, if not impossible, to pull off what it is that we have, been doing.
Yeah.
Because it would have been that much more difficult to increase the likelihood of people taking a chance on myself and, inevitably us as a firm as we've evolved. So just to answer a question you had earlier, though, about the idea of the anchor, there has been, although I don't like talking about it, there has been enough evidence in the marketplace of, so let's say you talked about those top people. Enough people in proximity of Culture Matters know they're privy to people of influence that have hired Culture Matters. Like, no matter what you do, like if the client tells other people, like, I may want to respect the privacy of those we work with. If they want to go and tell someone, I'm not going to tell them to stop talking. I mean, I try. I've tried the more, meaning, because it's about the result more so than, me trying to, in this industry, like the goal is the result. It's not just to get as many people for what we do, as many people to grow us as possible. It's more so we're growing through the success of our client partners. Totally. So it's vitally important that the person in my seat protect the relationship. So what's ended up happening is 2 people have written about me in their books.
Sick.
I didn't ask for that. If
Mhm.
anyone's listening to this, they'll hear, like, we have a whole series going out every a few weeks. We're doing a series on finding honor, the journey to the truth, that Christine dedicated to me, which is like, I don't even know how to process it. Still working on accepting that. And someone included 30 days of thought in their recent book, a whole section of their own 30 days of their own thoughts. I didn't ask for this. I didn't expect this. But I look at it through my own education around business and think, all right, well, Socrates decided to invert. He didn't write anything down. He asked questions and guided other people to think for themselves. And some of the fruit of that was Plato wrote about him. Now, I'm by no measure Socrates, but just to use it as like a metaphorical, or that's a literal case study, I guess, but those events really occurred. So, because we read Plato today and he talks about Socrates, and so on. So the anchor idea, my retort to your question is, you're exactly right. I actually thought this through, and I didn't share this with the audience. I have not shared this with the Culture Matters audience. But in essence, that's part of the value of the podcast. Because if I'm meeting with the authorities of power and influence at varying degrees of education and cultural authority, and I'm meeting with them, I'm listening to them and engaging with them, and not generally not having open discourse like we are, because that's not the season the podcast has been up to this point. The season of the podcast at this point was to represent the Culture Matters values, like in action. Implicitly that raises the value of the person, because you're hearing the person, that the host, interact with the authority.
Yeah.
And 100%. Say, oh, look at them. They're asking the questions. Where are they getting the information in their brain to ask those questions? They must be an expert in everything.
Yeah.
In all the conversations. So that the podcast has forced me to be prepared and diligent and reveal the level of expertise without even talking about it, without even sharing the expertise. So the implicit undertone is, this guy is a competent authority in insert.
Yeah.
So I agree with your thesis completely.
And I think the core though too, and I totally get what you're saying, but is like what you said about, you're doing such good work that even though you're not saying anything to others, your clients are literally talking to others about it, just because the transformation is so large and like the experience is so good. And it's kind of like, it was interesting. Hermosi is actually coming out with a second book. I'm sure you've seen him post about it and stuff. He's coming out with another book, and he said he was basically able to get, I think he was able to get something like this, like 10,000 plus affiliates for his next book launch, but without like paying them anything. And the reason is because his content is so good that people are willing to essentially like just share it with their audiences because it looks good on them to do so.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I guess, there's different motivators, right? Like for us, obviously, our service is very good, but, we also give a 20% commission. So people can make a lot of money by just like clicking an email and making an introduction. But it's just interesting where I think you and Hermosi are similar in that sense of like, for him, it's more like like content to the outside world. It's helping so many people that people are like, dude, you don't need to give me anything. Like, I want to share this with my audience for, reason X, Y, Z. And then for you, your clients are having such a good experience. They can't even help themselves by talking to other people about it, So ultimately what I'm getting at is like, all of this stuff is good. Partnerships.
Well, I think I want to just, a percentage of them are not necessarily doing that. They just are, I would argue, from a loving standpoint, because this is where I could learn from you. And I would argue that, you know, I'm in one direction, pathological, and you may be in another.
Yeah.
Where it's like, what can I learn from Tyler? Maybe it's okay that people know what I do. Like,
Yeah.
so I would argue that those that care about me and what we're doing and what we're about, they're trying to help me, which is the most endearing thing of someone that loves me, which is, help me. They're compensating for my blind spot, or meaning you can protect, in theory, you can protect the relationship, protect the integrity of the relationship while still marketing one's value to the marketplace. And I am growing,
Yeah.
growing to figure out what that looks like.
I think, yeah, I mean, you're definitely right there too.
Like, even just having this conversation live without really knowing where we're going to go with this, but because you're the perfect person to have it with, because of our journey over the years, you compliment me very well. You are extremely open and integrative, clearly, like all your affiliates and how many people you help and have helped and continue to help. And I'm like complete inversion of that, where there's almost nobody, it's like, Jay, will you just like let me help you here? Like, and it's like almost pathological. And I'm even say Alex, in a sense, as balances it well. I wouldn't compare him. It's hard to compare his product offering to either of us because we have different businesses. Even as him and his wife would be an ideal client partner, because we'd be even behind the scenes of whatever they're doing, helping integrate and implement the vision, operationally, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's what comes to mind, is that the idea of collaborating with those that compete with one, I agree with it, and I've never, I believe I do that constantly through the podcast. Like I'm inviting people on that are competitors.
Yeah.
Varying degrees of, even people that, in a sense, let's say we're working on a project with a corporation. Like, I have people on that we do projects together where there's competitive elements to that. The way I always look at it is like, and you're like this too. How can we collaborate? How can we create more? I'm curious what you think of that. Like, how open would you be to do business with, I guess, another book publisher, another book marketer, if it helped the client?
Dude, wide open. I mean, 100%. I wouldn't even like question it. Like, for me, and what's funny about this is, like, I actually think the leaders in an industry would probably actually be the most open to collaborating. And the reason I think that is because they're already crushing it. So it's like, they don't really see you as a threat or anything. I don't think they're like, oh, like, just in the scenario we talked about before, if it's like you're like a new business, like if you went straight to the top, they would be like, okay, yeah, like and it would be for multiple reasons. It'd kind of be in like a mentor way, which feels good for the mentor and the mentee, right? So they would be like, oh, you're new to the industry, like, here's some tips, like, help you out. And then, oh, you want to like help me do something for free and collaborate, or what? Like, I actually think the people at the top would be the most receptive, rather than somebody who's at a similar stage as you, because then they could actually really view you as competition. And some people, I wonder what the percentage is. I think it's majority. I think most people are not like this. Like, I think most people really, and there's probably many reasons for it, but it's like, I think most people are just like straight up competitive. Like, there's winners and losers. Like, there is no, I collab with my with other people in my industry. It's like, no, like the only way for me to grow is to kill all
But how
them.
much of this could be our psychologies having had partners that were competitive and we became
Yeah.
number one? So if you think about it, we're both integrators.
Yeah.
Like there's certain personality types. A good book for this, for anyone listening to this, would be, I'll show you, Ty. It's called Corporate Life Cycles.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called How and Why Corporations Grow and Die and What to Do About It. It was recommended to me by one of the podcast guests a few years ago, Bill Dallas, a 2 hour and 46-minute podcast. He's
Nice.
a beast. And in the 80s, I believe, he hired one of the coaches of this guy, Addy
Mhm.
Zez, and he told me about this book. So I went out and bought every book the guy ever wrote. And he talks about these different, read them all. This guy, he talks about these, and he's still with us. He's in his 80s. He's still alive. I hope to meet him someday, have him on the show. So Bill recommended it, and he talks about these various pathologies. And one of them, is the spiritual nature of the organization is that integrator. It's the woo, the person that gets people excited. They're an open type person. If they don't build a little bit of a radical no, the ability to say no, they become what he calls the soaked fish.
Okay.
You can't get it. You can't get them. You never know. What do they actually think?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I resonate with that. In fact, I'd argue it's hard to be a good advisor. Well, it can be looked at many different ways. It helps to be open to what other people think if you're going to help guide them through thinking.
Mhm.
Because when you're helping someone guide, when you're Socrates to the student, it's like listening openly, asking questions, not pushing your ideas on them, helps someone think for themselves over time.
Yeah.
Whereas you can see a real strong personality might come in and just tell everybody what to do. And that's a deliverable. That's could be, a pundit, like a speaker come in for the day, share their talk and share all the things that everyone needs to fix, like a John Taffer on Bar Rescue kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh,
He's not he's not
I love
an
it.
integrative type. They called it like like a lone wolf, first in, last out. Like, this is the way it's got to get done. This is the way we got to do it, So anyway,
Yeah.
the question I have for you is, how much could this be of like how we started our businesses? Because we both started our businesses having left a partnership, and then now we're on our own.
So I think it's part of it, but I also think that, at least for me, I think a lot of it too is like the culture of sports. That's what I'm thinking about right now, is like, when you grow up, and obviously not everybody plays sports when they're younger, but to me, it seemed like at least a majority of guys do. So regardless, like I played all the sports, right? And in sports, they're really, you don't really collaborate with your competitors, right? Like that would be, you wouldn't like, say to your opposing football team, like, hey, like next time maybe run this defense because our offense is going to do this. Like you probably wouldn't do that. So that is straight up just like, most of the, and players can be friends outside, right, on opposing teams, but when it comes to the actual game, it is straight up no collaboration. It is, you against the other, right? And I think that culture, because as young boys, we are in, like so many of us are in that, then we get older and go into careers and business, and that same culture gets transferred over. And then not every, but a lot, I think most, and maybe my thinking is skewed, but I think most people in business that are, running companies or in those more competitive fields of like sales and stuff, they really look at things as, for them to win, the competitor has to lose, because that's how sports are. Whereas the way I think is like, the more I can help my competitor win, the more I'm going to win. Like that's literally like the opposite thought. So just interesting. I don't know. Do you think that there's enough, do you see that transfer of culture? Like, I don't know. I think that's probably true. I mean,
Well,
I guess I don't know, but
no, I'm not gonna disagree. I mean, I mean, how do we reconcile the fact that we are competing and if we don't cooperate, meaning if you cheat, you're not going to get invited back to the game. So there's a cooperative element within competition.
True. Okay. Yeah. Good point.
I mean, and right. I mean, at some level, the if we're able to compete in a cooperative manner, then what? We're going to get invited to more games. People are going to want to continue to play with us. Both, you could look at this internally in a company and externally. Like, here's an example. The people there are those that will convince themselves that there is absolutely no competition, yet ironically they're competing with their own people internally. I see that often.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, it kind of inverts in a sense.
Yeah.
So instead of us being focused on the competition so we could cooperate one another to beat, to win, to create market share, we end up convincing ourselves there's none and then competing internally. I've seen it both ways is kind of where I'm going with this. The human mind played tricks on it. So do I agree with what you just said though? Yeah, there's probably truth in it. I mean, think about how one-dimensional,
Yeah.
most things are. It takes a lot of thoughtfulness to not be one-dimensional.
I think you're right. I mean, I didn't, for some reason, because I was thinking mostly football in my head, and it's like your opponent, like your competitor is your enemy, right? Like, in football, it's like you like the coach is like getting you riled up, like kill him, not literally, but maybe break a bone or two, right? Like literally, because it's you're hitting each other. So I just think but there is actually cooperation within competition. So not all of it is actually in the view of like an enemy.
I think that'll be proportional to the values of the leadership, the values of their ability to act it out. I will say though, it sounds like with your business model, you're adding value to part of the supply chain because the customer is the author. One of the institution that helps the customer act, solve their problem, which is what they don't have their voice in the world. It's not consumable. So the bookseller, not the bookseller, the book publishing house, they're solving them. And you had a brilliant idea to collaborate with the publishing houses, offer them something they couldn't offer. That's instead of going and convincing all of the authors to work with you, you're convincing the publishing houses. Do I have that,
Yeah.
understood?
No, it's exactly it. And then, if the publishing houses are convinced, and
doesn't that give you leverage? I mean, so some of the lessons for the audience is like, that gives the person in your shoes leverage because you're selling less like affiliate, and their brand is increasing the opportunity to do business with a customer you both share, creating more value overall. Is that kind of?
No, that's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, and I think too, what's interesting is we actually have some partners that like use our services and they do not want referral fees because they think it's like some of them think it's like out of alignment because they don't want to be referring for a monetary reason.
That's fair.
Yeah. Like they feel it's right to only refer for the reason of benefiting the client, not for any reason of benefiting themselves. So some of them, they don't want referral fees. And, I wonder, I mean, I guess I'll never know, right? But it would be interesting to know if I had never offered commissions from the beginning, if how many people would still be referring to us, because the reality is like for a book publishing house, if the book is published under them and then the author becomes a New York Times bestseller, that also very highly reflects positively on the publisher, right? So it's like,
Oh, I got one for you. The bigger
Yeah.
your brand is, the more likely they'll do it without the compensation because they'll get the power.
Mm,
You see, that's where the value of all this stuff is, and the content that I've seen you start doing. Meaning,
yeah,
if Tyler is famous
yeah,
and AU is its own, you know, um, its own ideology at an even higher paradigm than just publishing,
yeah.
then they get the benefit of helping their clients, and well, they get to attach your name to it. It's like
Yeah.
brought to you by Kim Kardashian.
Dude, 100. I know what you mean. And that's why we were talking about this before. I think my next step with things is, we do so many reach outs, like so much lead generation, but my next step is, I think, really like going down the brand path of like really kind of looking at the bigger picture and doing a lot of content, and maybe, not doing things necessarily from just like a conversion standpoint, like 10,000 plus reach outs a day and phone call, like, maybe maybe get like a billboard in Miami, or do kind of more branding things in a calculated way. You don't want to just throw millions of dollars out,
Sure.
randomly. But I don't know. I kind of feel like that is kind of our next step to get to that famous viewpoint.
Well, and then in theory,
Yeah.
could you send customers to these institutions then?
Wait, what do you mean? Sorry.
Meaning-
Send customers. Yeah.
So if you have a relationship with the institution that they trust, you're going to be able to market their customer that touched them first, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't it work both ways? Theoretically, if people are coming to you for ABC, then it's like, yeah, use these people.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
coming in both ways.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, I'm
Like,
curious what you think of that.
yeah, no. So like, the reality is, so we have 40,000 plus affiliates. I think this is what you're getting at. So we have 40,000 plus affiliates, and in our CRM, not on every single one, but on a lot of them, like I have notes, right, of like how we could also refer to them.
Yeah.
The reality is we do not refer to all of them, right? Like that would be impossible. But like I have like a section in the CRM of like who our top partners are, not just for us, but who we refer to. And what that looks like is like there's like a handful of PR firms that I think are the best. So when my clients want to do PR after we get them bestseller, then I refer to either all of them or whichever one I think is best for them. And then that becomes, like a kind of a branch off, and then if somebody gets to us before they have the book and I don't think we're the best publisher, maybe they want like a different kind of publishing, like hybrid or traditional, I have who I think are like the top in those. So it's all very organized in that way.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's why I always tell people too, when you do it this way, you become so resourceful. Like I always tell to potential clients, I'm like, whether you decide to work with us or not, I like highly advise you, like, just keep me in the loop and ask me questions, because even if it's not us for whatever reason, whatever it could be, I am certain I can like point you in the right direction and get you to the people that will be right for you. And a lot of people will do that. And then you become like, even if they don't work with you, you become a resource for them. And it's, it's still a good reflection on the brand, and it helps everybody, so I always leave people with that. And it's true, because I would argue I probably know more people in the publishing industry than any human on this planet. Like I don't see how anybody else could know, at least one-on-one,
Wow.
I mean, obviously more people know of HarperCollins than Authors Unite, but has the president of HarperCollins had, 10, 20,000 conversations with individuals in the publishing? Probably not. So, I don't know. I'm super resourceful in the industry. So it's.
What do you think that others should be looking at their business under that lens? How like, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, regardless of what industry you're in, and regardless if you're being compensated, it's just like an extra value, right? So think about it this way. Let's just keep with my business as the example. I just thought of this. So it's like, say somebody doesn't become a client of ours, but then I point them in the right direction and they hire 3 different people that I referred them to, like editor, publisher, PR agency. they're happy with all three of those other people. Maybe I got commissions, maybe I didn't. In this scenario, doesn't really matter. The thing I'm getting at is then afterward, instead of them referring their friends to those three people, they actually still, even though they didn't work with me directly, they still decide to refer their friend to me because they know I'm the guy that can get them to the right people. So if you can actually become like the resource of an industry, you know, whether they're working with you or not, you're the go-to.
Do you think that's because there's a decrease, even if it's like below awareness, that it could come back like, oh, you introduced me to somebody that just wanted to pitch me or some shit?
Oh yeah, no.
Like meaning it benefits the person psychologically in the trade-offs of, all right, I'm gonna make this introduction.
Yeah.
I'm making the introduction, Adam Smith, the invisible hand, the self-interest of the person. I'm making the introduction because deeply embedded in my body is the need to get some kind of compensation back at some point. Like there's this selfish gene, as Dawkins would articulate in the selfish gene. So the making the introduction, although it's generous, there's a selfish gene within it.
Yeah.
So they're going to make the introduction to the person that they think is less salesy and most resourceful. So they get the most satisfaction from the relation. I don't know. I'm curious what you think about that. Like, do you think there's some like, I'm going to lose 3 pawns to get a knight?
Yeah, I
I'm
think
gonna
so.
sacrifice my pawn.
Well, I actually have another, because you know more about this stuff than me, but I just kind of had a realization of, and I think we talked about this a little bit before, of like, I almost think that almost everything we do, at least a piece of it, is selfish. Yeah, I mean, whether you realize it or not, a piece, like, even if you go to the level of, you know, building a school in Africa, right? Like, it feels good to you to do that. And okay, the wealth of nations.
You see it?
Did you
Yeah,
talk
that's
about
what
this?
it's about.
Really? Yeah, like I think it's literally everything. It's just it varies in degrees, right? But I don't know if we do anything that's not a little bit selfish.
I think it's, I don't know. I've underlined so much stuff here.
Well, if you jump in front of a bullet for somebody, maybe that is one thing. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe
what would be the reason to do that?
I mean, I would
I mean,
hope.
if it's your kid,
Well, okay, yeah, that's different. Yeah. I mean, I think for your kid, I could see it as being like completely
like let's ask this
zero
question.
selfish.
Let's say it's for a stranger, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a scenario where someone did an act of courage and survived, and they didn't get a medal, applause, laid, money? Like,
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Not really, yeah.
Is it a cultural thing? Someone does something courageous
Yeah,
and the culture just destroys them?
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like there's, I don't know. I'm just curious. It's an interesting thought for the audience to think about. The wealth of nations goes into this. I've not finished.
Oh, really? Okay. I want to know
the invisible hand. I don't know
the
if
invisible hand. Okay.
yeah, the best interest. I don't know what chapter it's in. We also have to talk about that investment stuff. I want to pull that up because we
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
yeah, the book 1 of the causes of improvement in the productive powers of labor and of the order according to which its produce is naturally distributed among the different ranks of people. And it goes in, I underscored it. I thought I did. What is this? Many improvements have been made by the ingenuity of the makers of the machines. When to make them became the business of a peculiar trade, and some by that of those who are called philosophers or men of speculation, whose trade it is not to do anything, but to observe everything, and who upon the account are often capable of combining together the powers of the most distant, dissimilar objects in the progress of society. This has nothing to do with what I was looking for.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, I was trying
Anyway,
to.
it's a fascinating book. But he goes, I mean, essentially, you know.
Yeah.
So
That's funny.
I guess like in closing to this section or transition, right, of this section of the conversation, is there anything of utility for the audience as it relates to what we're talking about? Yeah, I guess it's a fair question.
Maybe, yeah, no, I agree. Maybe what it is like, if what we're talking about right here is true, that everything we do inevitably has a little bit of selfishness in it, maybe instead of like beating yourself up for that, then you just maybe kind of accept it and be okay with it. I don't know. Because like,
Fair.
I think maybe that's valuable.
How about this? Is there something that either like, what can I learn? So you had alluded to it. We have these relationships, and you've heard me articulate. It's utterly important that we protect the integrity of the relationship because of the type of work, the personal nature, of the type of firm we are.
Mm-hmm.
That differentiates us with our competition, I would argue.
Mm-hmm.
Just like your ability to essentially guarantee an audience for someone's book is a differentiating factor to a publishing house.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Definitely.
So what makes us unique and valuable to those that we have the opportunity to serve paradoxically undermines our ability to serve, because it by being so close-lipped, those that we could serve were unable. So how do you reconcile that paradox?
I don't know. It's tough. I think, so I'll just go with whatever's
Well,
popping
one
up.
thing that did work was the book. I'll shout you out on that again. Like having a book that I actually wrote has helped, because people that have read it and gone through 30 Days of Thought, which we published together, were more likely to like me.
Yeah.
Give me a chance. But outside of that, right, the next level, like there's other variables. How do I want you to your thoughts, your feedback. Like,
well,
how could I be more open in a way that doesn't undermine the values of us as a firm?
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing it right. With the podcast, and I've seen you starting to post like more on social media. And actually, I think like some of your videos I've noticed, like they're definitely getting better as far as like quality of the editing and stuff. Like I've seen you do some like you reflect on some other people's I can't remember what it was now, but it was on LinkedIn. Yeah, there was somehow, you had them say their piece or their quote or whatever, and then you reflect on it.
I want to know why you think that's helpful for me as a brand.
Well, okay. So okay, at first, so it's like, it kind of catches the eye at first because the person, and again, I can't remember the person it was, but the person you were reflecting upon was like a well-known person, right?
I've done it with like Robert Greene, Andy Frisella, Jordan Peterson, Steve Jobs.
I think it was Robert Greene or Jordan Peterson, the one I saw, I think. But so it's, somebody that a lot of people know. So that catches the eye. And then your input on it was, and I guess this is silly because I can't remember it, but I remember thinking that it was good. So whatever that says to you. It's like me reading books.
Well, that's the Ralph Waldo Emerson thing. Yeah.
I can't remember what I read, but it really helped me. So, but
I'm going to do one on you.
Yeah. Yeah, please. But
what Tyler's saying here is
but
we should just do them on each other. Maybe that's the whole thing.
Dude, that would be so fun.
That's like a strategy. It's like you called Jordan Peterson. Jordan, I'm going to do 20 videos on you and you're going to do them on me. And then we're going to blow up.
Dude, that would be.
Everyone will think we're like talking shit about each other.
Wow. What if I did that with all my affiliates? That would probably, that would be
basically this is like a $17 million idea that we just created live on podcasting.
Dude, I think it's brilliant. Yeah, I think it's great. But
if
no,
I did that all your affiliates, something's happening right now. Just continue that thought.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the only thing would be, for them, it's only dissecting one person. For me, it's dissecting 40,000 different people. So that would be a lot of content, but we could do it.
Like if you did that, here's what I love about this person's book. This is what I've learned about their book. And like a percentage of those people are going to end up doing one just about you as a person, maybe.
Yeah.
And the more personal content you have out, the more likely they'll want to do it of you. Like I've done one recently of Brad and it was hilarious.
Oh, dude. Well,
like I love him. So like,
I'm sure that was hilarious.
Like,
Yeah. No, but so let me actually just say this, because I think this actually is the most helpful. The fact that I can't remember the content, I guess, we can laugh about, but the reality is I remembered that you posted it. And I think I remembered it is because the quality of the editing and like, it was just higher quality than what you were doing before, or maybe you want to call it different. Like maybe it's not a quality thing, but like you had subtitles, it was like you side by side with like Jordan Peterson, he says his thing, then you reflect. So like, it was like to me, like very high end social media posts, like it looked professional, just looked good, like from a branding perspective. So that's why I even remember it. It like stood out, so hopefully that's helpful, but then I fail as far as comprehending, the content as always. So,
what else? What do you think we can add without undermining the solvency?
Yeah.
The dignity or the.
Well, okay. So let me ask, like the partnership thing that we do. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have to share anything about your clients, like, so you could still do that method and only speak about what you do as like a company, but you don't have to bring your clients into it, like personally. Because I think that's what you're saying is like in your culture, you do not like, you keep that close knit. You do not like, you don't.
I wouldn't, for example, to my benefit, I've been asked recently on a podcast, a few, like,
yeah,
I'm getting interviewed right now. Tony Capullo has been interviewing me for the Culture Matters podcast, and we're releasing these where it's like we're going to be we're talking about some of the concepts and frameworks that I believe undergird corporate culture, like so on and so forth. And so I don't care how much it could benefit me. I would never, like, if I know something about you, you don't want other people to know, that'd be unprofessional to share it to my benefit. Or
sure.
I get paranoid, even like, I don't want to know. I don't want to use someone's name in vain to my betterment.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's taken to an extreme. I mean, right? That becomes a paradox that we have to reconcile. What makes us great simultaneously undermines our ability to serve. So so anyway, like if people have asked me, I've lost business for this, like, give me an example, somebody you serve and do this. And I'd rather lose the business than compromise the person because of the type of work it is. It's very, it's like neuroscience, when a surgeon is working on a brain, you got to be careful what you do with the scalpel. So how can we represent our value to the marketplace without showing people's brains?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think dude, so I think there's two ways. I think one, you keep doing what you're doing by like over delivering to your clients. So like inevitably, whether they're doing it because the experience is so good or they're trying to help you, and maybe it's a blend of both. I think just continuously improving your service and product will do that. But then secondarily, and I mean, we're both fans of him, and I think him personally, right? Hormozy, so he comes up a lot in these conversations. But like,
I wouldn't even say personally, just because I wouldn't want to get that vibe.
Yeah, just like
standing next to him once, those,
okay, fair.
Those kind of people, like, I'd rather just, I don't have a relationship with Alex.
No. It's funny, like, not to go off track, but I'm glad you said that, because it's like, that would be like, there's actually a guy that we both know, which I'll keep nameless. who like met Gary Vee once and like shook his hand and then was saying that he's like best friends with him after. So it's
Yeah,
like,
like that kind of
you don't want to do
behavior is
that.
what I know when I die and God says, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
That's the kind of behavior I'm trying to avoid as I become a professional. I want to be a
totally.
professional. That's
Yeah,
like,
no, I'm glad that actually happened then, because I couldn't remember. I thought maybe or whatever. So you
no,
guys,
no. I frankly, like, I'll tell you offline, but I wouldn't talk about it on the recording. I don't have a relationship with Alex. I do admire him though. Smart
yeah,
guy,
oh, perfect. Okay, so
Yeah.
we both can relate on
Very
that.
hard worker, and I like the
Yeah,
dynamic he has with his wife, and I understand what they're up to deeply, and I consider them successful and
yeah,
exciting. It's exciting to see, our generation having a voice in this arena.
yeah. He's around
Yeah.
our age, and yeah, I mean, I think it's what I love about his model is that to me it's like so logical. It's actually very simple and like in a sense of like, okay, we build successful businesses. Let's give free content or very cheap content to help others do it. And then people that like apply it and get to the 3 million a year or plus mark, they can then work with us and we'll
Well, let's
invest.
be clear. They're in private equity because they've been acquired by private equity. That's nothing new. That happens every single day. Private
Yeah,
equity is the allocation of capital in the private markets. It's
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and so they they were able to generate an substantial revenue. This is my understanding of their business.
yeah,
Originally through ClickFunnels as a client of ClickFunnels, having successfully sold a product offering, vertically integrated that product offering. That product offering was like gym consulting with other products, having built a community from online mastery as disciple mentees of Brunson, right? Who's a mentee of Robbins, among others. Also Joseph Smith, no longer with us. Mormonism was started in 1831. Russell's a brilliantly read, well-read guy. I'm sure he's read almost as many books as me. I don't know if he's read more, but I'd love to know. I
yeah,
respect him and admire his intellect for sure. But
yeah,
they are disciples. They acted out the methodologies of ClickFunnels. They created a community, mimetically analogous to what ClickFunnels does. You get together, you get your awards. They modeled that to the T, online, offline. So without the events, there's no Berkshire. Without the events, there's no ClickFunnels.
mhm,
And what happened? They've developed products and a run rate that private equity said, these are people we could bet on. This is a run rate that'll give us a good return after our hurdle rate, which is the cost of capital and the like inflation, interest, and whatever the hurdle rate is that's based on the investment firm that acquired them. So
yeah,
now they're focusing on a media, which is very intelligent. They're a great investment for people that have capital that want to bring capital from Wall Street to Main Street
mhm,
through alternative investments. Now, what are they doing? They're looking for deals. And they're going to increase, like theoretically, shareholder value by advising, consulting. You have third party objectivity. I'm sorry, third party view creates objectivity. It's why consulting is a phenomenon, a naturally occurring phenomenon. By being a third party, we don't have skin in the game. It's easier to give your opinion.
mhm,
So when you actually know things the other party doesn't know, you create shareholder value. That's how we operate as a firm. That's how a McKinsey or a Bain operate. So they're in essentially private equity now with some of their money, and I'm sure and other backers who I'm not familiar with. And what are they looking for? They're looking for deals. It's nothing new. We're seeing it like crazy all over. It's always been, but that's nothing new. That's it was popularized in the 80s, but it's been around since. I just read a book about the DuPont cousins that took over DuPont in the 1900s. How did they blow up DuPont when they almost went out of business, or they almost got bought out in the early 1900s? They did a roll up. They bought a bunch of gunpowder competitors and they owned 60% of the market. And then they They made 4 billion equivalent today in World War I selling gunpowder and guns and shit to the government. Right. So if they hadn't done those acquisitions, like there was a Hormozy on the team. His name is Coleman. He was the outgoing intellect. And then there was a guy that was like the engineer. And then there was a guy, which was like Layla, like the internal operator, a guy named Henry. And there was a guy named Pierre Samuel DuPont, who was the great-great-grandson of the founder of DuPont. Yeah, I can keep going. Who was the M&A guy? Anyway, I digress. What they're doing is they're doing private equity. Because they marketed products and services, got bought, and now they're growing their portfolio. I really like them. I mean, I'm sorry, I go on for 10 more minutes. They're executing on what 99.9% of people have no idea even exists.
I know, yeah.
Now, the reason I do is because I've read, like, I don't know, thousands of pages of, M&A and family office consulting and organizational psychology. I mean, the list goes on. I've studied this stuff. Yeah. That's what they're doing at a very high level. Integrating it in media, social media. That's very that's new age shit.
Well, that's what I was getting at is like, and it's still good to know all that information. But what I was pointing out is I think with him, I actually don't notice much in his content where he's actually talking about his clients. Like if you read his first book, $100 Million Leads, it's very like practical and like, here's how to do things, but I don't actually recall, and like equations and stuff, but I don't actually recall him actually mentioning his clients that much. So maybe your approach with your content, can be somewhat similar, right? And it's obvious it's working for him, obviously. So I don't know. That's all I was trying to point out is like, I think there's a way for you to continue your content and talk about your business and really, blow up without having to mention your clients, so that's all I was.
Yeah. What do you think? Any other feedback?
No, I wish I could give you more, but like,
maybe I just thought of this because of what you said earlier. Maybe I should do content around what I think they're up to.
That would actually be really interesting, right? From like a culture perspective, or like meaning like, dude, what if you did this? Like predictions of like people of where they're headed, like what you think they're actually like trying to achieve. So like Jordan Peterson, like where will Jordan Peterson be in 10 years or like 5 years? Like, so that would like, I don't know. I think I would watch that. That would be so interesting. Like to have a real detailed, like analyzed perspective of like, here's where Jordan was, here's where he is. And because of all these things, I think in 5 years, this is what he's trying to achieve.
One of the services we provide is it may sound a little nuts, but I part of the reason we have relationships for so many years is because if you have someone on your team that makes prediction after prediction after prediction that turns out to be correct, and you start making money based on those, you tend to not want to lose that asset. And I'm not alone in that. This is how George Soros made 40% per annum for decades. Some people are good at speculation, and you will have wrong speculations, but you can increase your ability to speculate accurately just by reading, writing, listening to people, right? Doing so it's something that that's good feedback. That's like, this is where you're always helpful to me, is like, Ty, you're as open as I once was. Like I once was. Woo. like we've always got along in that way.
I love that, dude.
You know me better than anybody. That's why I had to do these shows the way we're doing them with you, because you know me better than like mostly everybody, you and a couple friends I have. So it's like, how do I introduce myself to the Culture Matters podcast? Not hide behind my skill sets.
Yeah.
Because the listening is a skill set I developed.
For sure.
Developed that. I didn't listening doesn't come naturally to me. I'm a know-it-all, insecure talker.
Yeah.
So like you like that version of me, others
Sure.
hadn't. That led me, closer to where I am today. And then of course you adapt, right? So I built an adaptation around that to be valuable as not all of myself, like extremely valuable to a handful of organizations. So but I'd like to not repress all of mine.
Yeah.
So that's where you even just always talking, because that's why I dedicated the 100 calls to you. It's like, it'd be good to start talking to people again. It's not natural for me to not do that. I don't know what came to mind just now.
Well, it's interesting. So, okay, yeah, we'll see how this comes out. But I think like I remember in Miami when we both spoke at Epic Talks.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, no, lot of fun. And like I actually remember, and I remember when I first met you in Miami as well. And I actually am like in my mind, I'm like playing out that version of you and then who you are now. And it's just interesting where I think I mean, I like both versions, but I actually love, like, dude, when we were on the boardwalk and we were going wild and you were, talking to me about, Hitler and stuff or whatever. It was just fun.
Yeah, how terrible he is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So,
Well, the culture, yeah. I mean,
yeah, no, or just everything. Books, like it wasn't, I don't know, that just stood out as one of them. But basically, like, I think that for most people, that version of you was just like overpowering and like extreme. And maybe to some, like it came off as intimidating, maybe to some, just being completely honest, maybe to some, maybe annoying to some. I don't know. But I'm just taking guesses as maybe that's why. But what I think is interesting is like, I think that the people that you became friends with at that time in your life, like me and some, like whoever else it was, like to me, I found it as like very fun, entertaining, and just to me, just kind of saw like a brilliant human that was just kind of like electrifying like it was just like a lot. But I loved it. So I don't know if I would, whatever, you did what you did, repressing it, and things are where they are now. But I think there is like a happy balance with it, you know what I mean? Like, and I guess that's what you're in the middle of finding, where, you can get up on stage and talk and be energetic, but maybe it doesn't have to be as because I like remember your talk at Epic Talks, and like, if I remember, it was wasn't it like kind of extreme? Like, I don't remember, like it was kind of like, it was a little intense, which is fine.
intense is like
An understatement, maybe, right? I don't know. So like, I'm like kind of reflecting on it with you. Like, I don't have all the answers, obviously, like, but it's an interesting topic, because I actually never thought about it fully until you said that you literally became aware that however you were acting to some people, maybe it was bothering them in some way. So then inevitably you pivot your personality a little, I guess. And now you're kind of trying to find yourself again. Is this that,
it's okay. Yes. How I would say is that building one skill set. Nietzsche said, be careful when casting out a demon, you don't throw away the best of yourself.
Oh, wow, dude, he's good. I like that guy.
He's a beast. Where is he? Here he is.
Where are you, buddy?
Yeah,
I like you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a guy.
I've yet to even finish Dawn of Day, but that book's near my bedstand, and every aphorism is just, here's like, the Beyond Good and Evil right here. One of the most here's a sign of strong character when once the resolution has been taken to shut the ear even to the best counter arguments. Occasionally, therefore, a will to stupidity.
It's so good, man.
Here,
gotta
the
start
will
reading.
to overcome an emotion is ultimately only the will of another or of several other emotions. It's anyway, so okay, here's an example. If I'm listening, I'm not speaking. So
Mhm.
there's a casting away of part of me in actualizing another part of me.
Mhm.
What if our whole life is a big metaphor of that?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to evolve into a person that can burden power. Speaking from stage is one thing. Being able to go into a corporate environment and say nothing so that I could figure out what was really going wrong is another.
Mhm.
A time to speak and a time to listen. How do
Yeah.
you reconcile that? It's maturing as a business owner, maturing as a person. I think they're connected,
Yeah.
evolving, right? And then you add all learning, thinking, writing, listening to books, reading books, interviewing people, following that curiosity.
Mhm.
If you think about the podcast, right? The podcast started with me just preparing for hours and interviewing.
Yeah.
That's like the pendulum swung the other way. I used to just go on stage and talk. And
Yeah. Wow.
now I'm interviewing. And now I'm starting to conversate a little bit, like today.
Mm.
See, like it's like no matter what I do, I'm gonna figure out a way to not, you know. And then if I can be a little too hard on myself, it's like, well, maybe that I there's nothing I can do about that because
Mhm.
it's paradox. If you're not speaking, you're listening,
Yeah.
or if anything, suspending speech. So yeah, I'm continuing to evolve and learn. I know one thing I want to borrow from you, I want to learn from you is, how can we bring more value to the marketplace? Meaning, how can more people benefit from what it is we've been up to? I think it's a responsibility that I have to myself and also the people that have chosen to work with us, not just our client partners, our employees, because
Mm.
the organization has to grow for them to have upward mobility.
Totally. Yeah.
Like a business has to grow and grow and grow and grow, or else what's really going on? I don't know. I'm curious what
Yeah.
comes to mind and you're in a growth phase.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think first thing with what you were saying before is like, really just becoming aware of what's going on and like in your surroundings and the impact you're having, and then pivot. And like that quote of Nietzsche is still in my head. That's such a good one. But yeah, it's actually, it's interesting. So I'm down here in Colombia and I'm growing like a sales team down here. Oh, and actually, dude, so crazy. You made me aware of this guy, Vic Tipnis or Tipnit. Do you know what I'm talking
Absolutely.
about?
He's been on the podcast twice.
Yeah, there you go. So, dude, he has an office right here in Medellin. I think he has like hundreds of people in the office. Like, so like he's
Wow.
scaling down here too. But regardless, so I have what do I have? I have four in-person people. That's actually why I'm doing the podcast in here, because they're all out there working right now. So, yeah, they're working outside right now, and what the leader of the sales team was basically like, hey, like prices down here are so cheap. Why don't we get an office for 100 people and let's just hire 100 people and really scale this thing? And maybe I'm wrong in my thinking, I don't know, but to me, I was just like, well, look, my people in the US were doing over 20 mil a year in revenue. And that's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to say how many people it is because it's a lot of like virtual assistants. And let's just say it's maybe 20 people, some part-time, some full-time, right? So that's where that is. And I'm like, down here, we just started. And to be honest, like we really haven't gotten many sales yet. They're just like 2 months in and they're like just starting to do partnership calls. I'm just getting them like revved up. So in my mind, I was like, I don't see the risk reward ratio making sense. Okay, so I get 100 person office where you hire 100 people in Colombia, Wolf of Wall Street, not full that style, but you have the bell in the office and that's the culture, right? And I was like, okay, that could work. But in my mind, I'm like, first, let's have 4 people make 50 grand, or like 20 grand, let's start there. And then once that's working, I'll reinvest. And I want your feedback on this because I do believe that in my nature, I think I'm a little too cautious sometimes and I miss out on growth because of that. But I also like enjoy sleeping at night. And if I got 100 person office, even though I could easily afford it, but I would still be thinking like, am I wasting this money? Does this make sense? And I would literally be like, health-wise, I would decline. I know that I would. So like, I don't know, that balance of like taking risk and having extreme growth, or in my mind, I'm more of like a steady growth guy with like very minimal risk.
Firstly, I would not.
I love you.
No, I would not attempt to give you an answer.
Okay.
Without learning more information specifically about, what it is you guys are looking to accomplish in the first place, why, how you see that currently with the plan, like how you came up with that in the first place, like that, what you're looking to accomplish, why you're looking to accomplish it, how you're looking to accomplish it. It would be very, in my mind, ego driven to attempt to give a specific answer to that question based on not knowing enough, because I haven't listened, learned, absorbed, experienced the nuances of everything that you have been working on, have done, and then where you're trying to go. And I mean that it would be self-serving. And ultimately not as helpful as maybe you with your team asking those questions and figuring out example, like what's that person thinking? Why are they thinking that? How do they see things unravel? Are there things now that they see that they may not be able to articulate or are not fully sharing with you that's leading them to think, the grass is greener? Like that sounds like an opportunity for interplay there to figure out what is not working, what is working. What do you think about this? Because if I tell you something that agrees with you, for example, well, then now just an external pundit is maintaining your homeostasis. If I say something that disagrees with it, I've now thought for you because I haven't learned enough about what you're really trying to do.
Sorry,
it sounds like an awesome opportunity to have a series of meetings with your team to figure out what is and what is not working and what they want and what they don't want. And now outside of that, it comes right back to those first things, like what exactly are you guys looking to do? Why are you looking to do that? How do you foresee it now? And in the process of that, we figure out enough of some natural contradictions that build up, and we get more clear on, well, what worked in the US? Why did it work? How did it work? Who was a part of it? Who wasn't? And then we draw from that and figure out the plan for this country, essentially. That wouldn't be something we'd be doing right now, today. That being said, though, for the audience too, like we can make this practical for them. Warren Buffett says there's 2 rules of investing. Rule number 1, don't lose money.
Yeah, I knew that. Right.
Rule number 2, be rule number 1.
Yeah, I knew that.
I I
I
think
knew
that all
that.
jokes aside, like we have an actual relationship outside of the, you know, power structure that is the millions of listeners of this podcast. I'd love to learn more about all this, offline, because I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think it's fair to talk about your personal stuff on this show. Unless we
Yeah.
come to,
I guess my one thing I just want to say is like,
but
just
then wait, I want to know what you think of that answer too. So
I
after you
like.
go,
Well, I like it. I mean, I think it was the word soft is coming to like I think it was not it kind of played both sides, not in a bad way, but it didn't
welcome to
really.
my life.
Yeah. You politician, no. But this is what I want to say is just logically, right? To
Sure.
me, it makes sense to be like, we have 4, but let's just say it's 5 for just number's sake. It'd be like, okay, 5, it's working. Let's go 10, let's go 20. But to just be like, yo, let's throw 100 people in this thing and just try, like to me, that seems just
Well,
logically.
let's use another case study. We mimetically, like brand wise, who came up? What company came up as an analogy?
Um,
As an
wait,
analogy,
tell
Stratton,
me, what is it?
Stratton Oakmont, Jordan,
Oh, okay.
yeah, a fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
What I'm saying is like having experienced your intuition earlier in the conversation, you built the whole company on your intuition.
Yeah.
It got you to 20 million. Real sales, not fraud, not Belfort, not Stratton,
Yeah.
not like social media likes. That being said, a dogmatist could say, well, whose company is it? Follow your intuition. A leader may say, well, the point of hiring someone is to help them think, so they help you think.
Mm.
So the hybrid of that is to say, ultimately, the vision of the organization at this size of an organization comes down to what does the founder want? Why do they want it? How do they think they can get it? Their people can help them figure out how they can get it in proportion to how clear they know what they're supposed to be doing and why they're supposed to be doing it. And that comes down to the communication feedback loops in our team meeting. Like, what is this person really trying to explain to us? That'll come down the conversation you guys have to figure out what is their what can be drawn from that, what knowledge can be drawn from that dialogue. And ultimately, the more prepared I am of what it is I'm trying to do and why I'm trying to do it and how I think I get to it, the better questions I can ask my people. And together we can figure out, all right, what makes the most sense. That being, as far as like a short retort, my bias is to trust in, based on what you've already succeeded at, your intuition and your judgments.
Got it.
Part of your intuitions and your judgments hired people to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd be curious what their reasoning is.
Yeah. No, I know what it is. So yeah, I get
So
we can
just
talk
have
about
those
that.
conversations.
Yeah. No,
And
I agree.
also,
That answers it.
a lot of people I see out there, Ty, a lot less successful than you, are just hearing the lip service of, frankly, unsuccessful, and I'm going to deem success as in like businesses that have good margins, that produce earnings,
Yeah.
that have stable cash flows, that have true like goodwill with their clients and their mini economy, purport these ideas online that are frankly idiotic.
Yeah.
It's easy to spend $1 million when you haven't earned it and you've raised it. So I
Totally.
don't know, it just
Dude,
my
maybe
original,
that's
I really
why
stand
too.
by it, man, because I take this
Yeah.
being a professional very seriously, to give advice without having all of the actual specific contextual elements, can it be a bit of an ego thing? And I don't want to steer you towards that answer without knowing more.
No. I think you actually helped a lot there. And I would say interesting that you brought that up because like, you know, living in Miami for as long as I have or did, I guess, you know, I kind of bounce back and forth now, but or I might end up coming back. We'll see what happens. But regardless, 7 years I lived there, is the amount of companies there that have funding, right? And you see I think maybe that's why I'm cautious and so less like risky, because all of the money that my business has made, zero of it is from funding, like zero, like nothing it's all been, you know, the phone calls, making the sales, making the partnerships, all like, you know, actually like made the money from people paying as clients. So I think there's a different psychology like that. Like when somebody just like throws $1 million in your account as an investment, you know, like you can be a little funny with that. You're like, oh yeah, I'll take the jet to the conference.
Well, and some businesses don't make any profit.
Yeah.
Some don't make any profit and they think that's like what should be. Some don't take any profit because they have a plan for how they're going to get a return on the vehicle. Like right now, I just got some shares in a DoorDash. They're losing money as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a reason to want to be a part of that ride.
Yeah.
So like a compelling reason.
Me with Rumble, you know, Rumble, the platform, the video platform.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I invest in them and like, they're apparently losing money now, but I see like the long-term vision of it. Right. So it just kind of makes sense to me, but.
So the question is, what's the long-term vision of AU?
Yeah.
And then where are the trade-offs? And getting clear on that is hard to do when you're actually doing what you said earlier, not taking as much time because you're making shit happen.
Yeah.
And that never goes away, that contradiction. Meaning, how do you think through the future when you're making shit happen? That's where advisors come in. That's where help comes in. Staff. That's where competent employees come in and, you know, building the team. And that's just part of the game. Like we're in it. You know, I have multiple advisors at this juncture. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
I'd be better of what I say I am and act as I am. It's like, you know, the mentor and the mentee, that bridge.
Yeah.
And where it's funny, another way that we represent each other differently is like, I would argue maybe I spend a bit too much time theorizing. You know, like actually, I've been having more. I did 61 podcasts since I won't say the date because I don't know when this is going out. In the last 5 weeks, I recorded 61 podcasts. That's a lot for me.
Wait, in the last 5 weeks?
Yes.
Sorry, I was like calculating. That's a lot. Well,
For
and
me-
they're all like an hour long, right? Or
Yeah,
like,
they're all an hour to 2 hours.
dude, no,
Well, no, some are 30 minutes and they go up to 2 hours.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And still reading copiously and all the responsibilities we have to our client partners. And I write these books, you know, for our various, like, you know, these books, these integrative books for team meetings and analyses. So writing those, but I've managed to squeeze in more time for calls, writing letters, because I am trying to come a little farther to the middle of that pendulum in the spirit of our conversation today.
Yeah.
So I think where I'm starting to be a bit more vocal, I think you're leaning more towards the introspective.
Yeah,
this business.
Yang.
Yeah, that's why we're here talking about this.
I love it. Yeah.
You've grown this business 8-figure plus all your sweat of your brow. And now it's now it's the sweat of your noggin.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your final thoughts? We're gonna have to do part 7 or part 5 on,
Uh,
we'll do
I think we have
stocks
part
next time.
6. Part 6 is next, I think. I think this is part 5.
Are you
I don't
sure?
know. I think so. Maybe I'm wrong though.
You might be
Uh,
right.
That's what the Zoom invite said, part
I
5.
changed it to 4
Oh, shizzy.
because
Okay.
I looked through and I think it is 4, but it could be 5, and I just confused everybody. But
It's
outside of
okay.
that, yeah.
Uh, so what, final thoughts kind of?
And even a retort to some of the things that I just said, like what exactly is happening here?
Yeah, okay. So, well, final thoughts, pleasure as always. A lot of things are sticking with me from the conversation. I think like I don't know why I just want to bring this up again, but the Nietzsche quote I think is really, really interesting. And it's so wild how like 5 to 10 words could be like a revelation as big as that. Cause it's just something I never thought about, where when you notice things about yourself that maybe you want to change, or maybe you don't want to change them, but you feel a need to or whatever the reason is, maybe there's actually a possibility of changing too much, right? Like, or like you don't want to lose everything over one demon, right? So I don't know, I just never thought about it that way. It's kind of interesting. With what we were talking about kind of in these last 10, 20 minutes, I think I'm going to go with my, intuition. But I do think that I do think that's in the future, not like the Wolf of Wall Street style office, but more so it's just that visualization of like actually having a full floor office with a bunch of like salespeople, and having that, because it's just a different environment, right? Like right now I got 4 people working like out of my house here. So it's like more casual. It just is. So whereas I feel like if we had that like kind of office and people were like, yo, just got a sale, it's an energy that like feeds into things. So I do think the vision is eventually doing that, but in the right time, right? There's just no need for it right now. It doesn't make any sense. But I think that would be cool. And then investing, I guess we should talk more about investing on the next one. I wonder, I guess, for my company, it'd probably be easy to get investments, but I've never tried. But right, like if you're like in the green heavily, then probably people would be like, yeah, I'll invest. Like, why not?
Well, the question becomes why would one want it? What would one do with it?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Equity is the most expensive, because once you give it, it's gone.
Yeah, that's why I think I don't know. Maybe that's why I haven't done it
But there's
yet.
plenty of people that want investors because they're missing something.
Yeah.
Resources, resourcefulness. So maybe maybe it's you that'll be the investor.
And that's where I think, we lead to the next one is like, I think I told you last time, I actually just invested in 2 paintings recently. I'm starting to get in art investing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So I don't know if it'll work or not, but just kind of get my feet wet in it.
Yeah, we can go through the market and look through filings and talk about.
Oh, that's what it was. It wasn't like about portfolio, although I mean we can share whatever we want, I guess, but like of actually analyzing something. Yeah. Yes, I 100% want to do that. I 100% want to do that. That'd be awesome.
In closing, what are your thoughts?
Happy, grateful, fun as hell, and I can't wait for part 5.